I think it gets frustrating for us when how you feel becomes more important than objective reality. I believe in listening to how you feel and then circling back to the issue, but not basing the conflict on emotions. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen very clearly. Men are not objective, especially in conflict. Women are not objective, especially in conflict. Friends beyond the binary are not objective in conflict. Now, this isn't an intelligence thing. This isn't a trauma thing. This isn't a gender thing. This is a human being thing. So no one is immune, no one is safe, but no one's wrong, right? No angels, no devils. So let's talk about why. As a whole, human beings are largely threat animals, threat detectors, and memory animals. And so what this means is our brains are really, really good for scanning for threat and responding to it. And our threat response is neurobiological, it's chemical. It's also not conscious. So we may pick it up in a tone of voice, in the way someone moves their hands, their eyes, their facial expressions, their word choices, or volume. To describe this experience, Daniel Coleman, in his book Emotional Intelligence, coined the term amygdala hijack. Now, I won't bore you with the physical indicators of amygdala hijack. We know what that is, right? Our heart rate increases, our palms begin to sweat, we may feel quivering in our solar plexus. But the other thing that happens when we're in amygdala hijack is it shuts down a connection to our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is what's responsible for complex decision making. So when we're in hijack mode, we have no access to our complex thinking, our logic, ration brain. We have no access whatsoever to the ability to engage with multiple perspectives. Our attention narrows and our memory becomes unreliable. And this kicks off a self-protective response called belief perseveration. There's an incredibly powerful quote by Nietzsche that I use to convey this point. I have done that, says my memory. I cannot have done that, says my pride, and remains inexorable. Eventually, memory yields. I think this is important why we remember that interpersonal conflicts are not debates. When someone's recollection of events are attacked, it is perceived and received by the body and brain as an attack on their person. And so even if a couple in conflict, right, brought together witnesses and evidence, this would not be enough to effectively convince the other that what they believe and the memories that they cemented from the event, from the experience, are wrong. This is why every couples therapist, every neurobiologist, every brain scientist says drop the content, drop the details when it comes to conflict. Okay, cool. So remember back in the beginning when I said we're also memory creatures? So that means as human beings with human brains, human primate brains, pretty much everything we do, every habit we develop, every behavior we exhibit is done by memory, is formed by memory. Very little of our actions or decision makings are guided or influenced by novelty. Actually, our brains are designed to automate for this reason. And we automate because it conserves energy. It's as simple as that. So when we're perceiving our actions in relation to another person's, we're using that memory system, which rolls all the way back to pretty much the day we were born. And so obviously we perceive ourselves as generally objective and right. We are the thing that our brain is working to protect. However, the memory of our partner and how we perceive our partner is incredibly adaptable and changeable as well. It's not static and it's not objective. The other tricky thing about belief perseveration is it alters the way that we store memories of an event. Let me explain. So not only does it change where memories are stored, but if somebody recalls a story or an experience with another person while they're angry, their brain will fill in the gaps of that story to lean more negatively. And the same is true on the positive side, which is good. That's something we can work with. This is why the way couples talk about their history or talk about their love in each other is an indicator in terms of divorce. Folks who tend to have a positive bias towards the past end up staying together longer. Folks that have a negative bias, so we're here, amygdala hijack, and we've got two people arguing about what did and didn't happen. And they're both wrong. Because of this little fascinating cocktail of experiences, humans tend to overestimate their communication skills in conflict. They seem to position themselves in their experience as objective. I think this particularly applies to privileged identities, but it applies to all of us. And people overestimate their memories. So when we're in conflict, we can't be talking to a person about what happened. Actually, rarely, if ever, are we talking to a person in conflict. We need to be talking to each other's nervous systems. And the only way to communicate to a nervous system is threat or safety. Until that prefrontal cortex is back online, as in the human being that you're interacting with or yourself has been returned to a relative state of safety, you are not going to get a single thing out of them. And like I said before, interpersonal conflicts are not debates. You cannot logic emotional problems, nor can you position yourself as objective when you are experiencing the very same neurobiological reaction as someone else. What we can do is arrive to each other's pain and arrive to the situation at hand, which is largely not what happened, but how the other person is feeling and experiencing it. Because if we go toe-to-toe in details, if we go toe-to-toe in what happened, if we go toe-to-toe in my reality versus yours, we go to war. And we also further cement the false or incorrect memory of our adversary. The best idea in relationship conflicts is to not have adversaries, to be able to return to a place of reciprocal mutual safety and talk about the problem collaboratively. This is the only thing that works. And I know we all have different definitions of what works, but in my view, someone getting so exhausted by a conversation that they just give up and roll over is not working. Someone getting so dismissive and frustrated that they end up just rolling their eyes, walking away, or stonewalling isn't working. The ideal scenario is that conflict moves us forward in some way. It allows us to come together, address a problem, and make decisions about it. And in doing so, become more connected. We can't do that if we're fact-checking and fact-finding. We can only do that if we're validating, listening, and regulating.